everybody. Today, we're going to cover the top 6 KPIs that we measure when we're dealing with our property managers. So tune in. Number 1, marketing conversion rate and leads. How are you measuring that? Number 2, occupancy and vacancy rates. Critically important, obviously, to the bottom line. Number 3, bad debt or average arrears numbers. How are you measuring the bad debt? And what are you doing to get control of it? Number 4, what's the turnover strategy and the loss to lease percentage? Do you know those numbers, and do your property managers know those numbers on a daily, weekly, monthly basis? Repairs and maintenance, critically important. Happy tenant, happy life. Got to stay on top of those repairs and maintenance. And number 6, rental revenue and other income. So tune in and get all the details and nitty gritty on those KPIs, and stick around and we'll give you a bonus at the end. Chris Roberts here, the founder and CEO of Sterling Rhino Capital. If you haven't heard, we're launching a new podcast, Charging Forward. So check that out on any of your iTunes, Spotify's, or places you like to listen to podcasts and multifamily education. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, today we're going to highlight the top 6 things that we measure with our property managers. We're talking KPIs today. So tune in and I'll give you my number 1 tip for working with property managers here at the end. But for now, we're going to talk about the top 6 KPIs that we look at. So the first one is marketing conversion and rate or leads. How do you rate your leads and conversion? Are you actually working with the property managers and holding them accountable? Do you have virtual tours? Are you running social media ads? Do you run Google ads or AdWords on apartment websites? Do your buildings have good websites, and is anyone tracking them? The SEO, conversions, things of that sort. Sometimes you might just bring on like apartments.com or rent.com and use them as your website. But if you actually have your own website, you need to measure that traffic. Otherwise, it's just a waste and it's not building your brand. You also have to pay attention to Google reviews. And are you doing anything to drive those reviews? Does your property manager meet with local operations or corporations to discuss contracts or rental opportunities, maybe on a larger scale? You know, there might be a manufacturing plant that's close by that brings people in on a transient level, 6 months, a year at a time to work during peak seasons. And does your property manager have a relationship with somebody who might be able to bring you really highly qualified tenants that are 6-month to 12-month leases at even higher rates? And you may have to actually save a unit for them, but it could be rental income guaranteed for long periods of time for you. So you want to make sure you're covering that. Number two is occupancy and vacancy rates. So this is really, really important, obviously, because it boils down to the pro forma being hit, and you have to make sure that you have a number and that you're measuring the property managers on that number. How are the tenants being treated by the local property manager? How are the tenants being incentivized to refer friends or bring leads in? Are the property managers hitting the targets? And if not, well, what are their solutions to hitting those targets? These are conversations that you have to be having on a regular basis, because you can't assume that everybody at every level understands that there's a pro forma to be hit. And there's nobody like you, obviously, to be delivering that message. Number 3 is bad debt or average arrears numbers. What are your bad debt, or let's say income that's frozen or sitting there? Do you have that percentage, and what are they doing to lower that percentage? What are the local managers doing to collect rents? What's the relationship like with the local tenants? Is there a process for rental assistance in place? And at what point do you evict versus working through those rental assistance programs? In other words, how long do you let somebody get into the arrears before you actually go through your eviction process? And the reason this is really relevant is not just how it factors income and affects everything, but if you go to sell and you have really bad debt or tenants that are in the arrears, it looks terrible for you at sale. And so you have to stay ahead of that, because when you start looking at T12s, you can see that there's a history. So you really got to stay on top of it, because it can get out of control, especially as you go through this COVID process, right? But it boils down to the relationship with the tenants. Some tenants can make payments on a regular basis. Some will file for assistance. Some just don't know how to do it. So you got to make sure the relationship's there. And at what point are evictions triggered? And is there a cash for keys program in place? Is there a strategy to just get those really problematic tenants out? And you may have to pay to play just to get them out. So you want to consider that. On to number 4. what is the turnover strategy and what is the loss to lease percentage? Again, what percentage of the time is a unit down while you're turning it, right? Or maybe somebody destroyed a unit. Maybe you have problems with contractors, and so things are taking a while. You have to make sure that you're on top of that percentage, because that's lost revenue that you're not getting back. You got to keep an eye on how long the units are down for and have a renovation plan in place so that you can get the new market rents. Or are those units going to stay at the classic rents and maybe not go through a full renovation process, which would basically close that delta for the loss to lease percentage. So if you're turning a classic unit, it might take you a couple days. If you're renovating a unit, it might take you 4 weeks. Who knows? So you got to have those numbers down and be discussing that with your property managers on a regular basis. So on to number 5, repairs and maintenance. This is a big one. Happy tenant, happy life. You got to make sure that you're keeping an eye on the maintenance logs and how many units are having issues and what type of issues at what level. Is the maintenance staff HVA certified, and how efficient are they at completing the task? Is the manager tracking this? How are they measuring all this stuff? Is the maintenance staff adequate to turn units, or does the property require an off-site crew, i.e. a construction company, to come in and actually renovate those units for you? Because obviously there's time constraints and additional costs. You got to know all that. How many work orders are there, and at what level are they? 1 to 5. When we work with property managers, we ask them, rate this. Is it severe? Is it middle of the road? Is it not a big deal? Again, you don't want your tenants living in squalor, and you want them happy, but you also have to have the personnel to get those units caught up. And the back of book or long-term repairs and maintenance issues can really creep up on you and pile up if you're not on top of them. So make sure you're paying attention to that, and get your maintenance guys involved. I mean, get them on a call every once in a while to talk about what's going on there. Don't shut anybody out. It's a team effort. And make sure that your property management company is doing that as well. Make sure everybody's happy. Number 6, so the last one here is rental revenue and other income. This is obviously a really important point to make. And 1 through 6 here is not in any specific order. They're all equally important, but obviously rental revenue and other income is really important, because that's how you pay the bills, right? It's how you pay investors. Are the income numbers hitting your pro forma on a weekly basis? And does the management company know what that is? Do they actually know what your pro forma is? Are they part of it? Or are you just sort of keeping them in the dark and complaining at them when they're not hitting their numbers? You got to get them involved. Everybody has to have sort of that pride and ownership mentality to execute. Are the property managers testing increases weekly? Or are they using a management software to assist with that in real time, like RealPage or Yardi or any of these others that are out there? Do they know that they can continue testing and pushing the limits until their leads start dropping off? Or are they just hitting a number that you set in the very beginning? It's interesting. Sometimes we'll look at these numbers in the system and we'll see market rents. Well, market rents are $100 lower than where current market rents are because perhaps they're not using that type of software to measure it. So again, don't assume everybody knows what your plans and roles and goals are. You have to stay on top of this stuff all the time. You got to make sure that you're paying attention to other income opportunities to bring up revenue. Pet fees, trash fees, Wi-Fi, group cable, parking, or RUBS. Those are just to name a few. You have to make sure that all of those things are being implemented if applicable, and that they are bringing in the additional revenue, and that your property managers are doing that on the new lease ups. Again, don't assume everybody's doing everything. Oftentimes, you can implement a garbage fee if you have trash problems on the property, and it takes care of half your garbage bill, and nobody even blinks because perhaps your rents are below market, and you can get away with a $10 increase or pest control increase or something like that. So pay attention to that because it adds up big time. It can add a significant amount to the cap rate and the value of the property. Have you placed bonuses or incentives in place to encourage the success of the team, including maintenance and local managers? What are you doing to get, again, everyone involved? Pride in ownership. Investors win, owners win, property managers win with increased revenue. Why are the managers and maintenance folks not incentivized as well, or at least brought in to feel like they're part of the team, part of the solution? So I encourage you to do that. And now you've stuck around for the 6 reasons why we measure these KPIs and things that we feel are very relevant. I'll tell you the number one thing that I've found that has added value is when we engage the managers and get them involved. So in other words, we don't just look at reports and get on a 5-minute call once a month. Every week we're having these calls and we bring everybody in. We bring all the partners in, we bring the property managers in, we bring the owners of the property management company in, and we have these really good collaborative conversations about how we can create win-wins for everybody. And we incentivize everybody. And I'd tell you that the number one thing that you can do is to get involved on a granular level in this process, at least for the first 30, 60 days. On a weekly basis, get on Zoom calls for 20, 30 minutes, even if they're just quick calls, so that everybody knows that you're paying attention to all these KPIs and you can get everybody to buy in and get everyone's feedback. So the number one tip I have for you guys when you're dealing with property managers and measuring these KPIs is to really get in it. And if you don't have the time to do it, then make sure you appoint a team member that can do it. But you want everyone to be excited and fired up about executing to hit that pro forma so that everybody's happy at the end. Really, really important. And always have a good attitude, good energy, good vibes. Make sure that everybody feels like we're in this thing to win and that you're not just complaining at people because they're not hitting their numbers. It's critically important. So again, this is Chris Roberts, CEO and founder of Sterling Rhino Capital. Please check out our Charging Forward podcast, subscribe to our YouTube channel, get all kinds of good education. And if you want to learn more about passive investing, you can text the word Rhino to 66866. I hope you all have a fabulous week. Thanks.